Welcome, movie fans. Thanks for joining us for episode 126 of Reading Between the Reels, the premier podcast of Overanalyzing a Galaxy Far, Far Away. If you're a new listener, we're so glad you found us. If you've been enjoying the show, please like, follow, and subscribe, and leave us a 5-star review on iTunes or Spotify. You can also support the show by posting on your socials and by joining our Facebook group. Today on the show, we have the 5th and final entry in this year's series of Star Wars conversations featuring my English classes and the return of Aaron Harris of Star Wars Reactions.
Hi. So do you think that if Leia was a Jedi instead of Luke, would the story have been different?
Absolutely. It definitely would have been different. I think it would, it's one of those things I would like to see told in like one of those what if stories things. But yeah, it definitely would have been different, especially with the way she was. You have to assume that she wasn't being brought up on Alderaan at that point. Then it would be a question of who was raising her, who was training her. So yeah, I think that the potential there is massive for a completely different type of storytelling when it comes to the saga.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If Anakin followed the Jedi rules, like not having any attachments, would he still become Darth Vader?
Would he have become Darth Vader? Probably not. No. But he definitely would be deader than a doornail because he would not have survived Order 66.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
If Anakin became a Jedi Master, would he still have turned to the dark side?
I think the title wouldn't have made a difference at that point. I think it was just something he wanted. He could have had it just another notch in his belt. Ultimately, what it came down to was saving Padme, and I don't think having the title of Jedi Master would have made a difference in his fall to the dark side in his hopes of saving Padme.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
What do you think bringing balance to the Force means?
Ooh, bringing balance to the Force. You know, that's a topic that could be discussed for hours. Ultimately, to have balance, you have to have both sides. You have to have the yin and the yang. There has to be an even scale. I don't think necessarily bringing balance to the Force means completely eliminating the dark side, because it's not going to be a balanced scale if there's nothing on the dark side. You just have the light side. It's an off-balance scale. You have to have. There's always going to be a good and an evil. So I think at that point, the balance that was being talked about and that the Jedi kept talking about, and they talked about the prophecy of the one bringing balance to the Force. I think there was a misunderstanding on the Jedi side that because they were looking at the Sith being defeated and the scale being tipped. But when Palpatine took over, the scale shifted. So now it had to get balanced back out. I still think there's more to the story out there because, you know, with Palpatine and Vader now being gone and there no Sith, there's got to be more Sith out there if balance was truly restored to the Order.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
In Revenge of the Sith, Mace Windu orders Anakin to stay in the Jedi Temple while he arrests Palpatine. Do you think this was a good idea?
You know, yes, because Anakin was, he could sense the turmoil in Anakin, you know. So he already had issues trusting the Jedi. Then he finds out the person he trusts the most next to Padme was the Dark Lord they'd been looking for. So that when you find out that your closest friend betrays you, there's turmoil there. So that made him an unpredictable element, as we see when he shows up against orders.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
What are your impressions on Order 66?
Wow. You know, it's, I tell you that just watching it from the movie perspective, it definitely is. It hurts it a little bit. You seeing all these Jedi you followed for years drop through the movies, but then when you see all the added stories that have been done since the movies that add to Order 66, whether it's the scene from the Bad Batch or the flashbacks for Grogu from the Mandalorian, it adds a depth to it, which makes it a really tragic event in the Star Wars timeline.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Could you compare the way Obi-Wan Kenobi conducts himself to how Anakin does?
Wow. There it's again two sides of a coin. You got Anakin, that's the fly by the seam of his pants, make things up as he goes, and just runs face first into danger. Where you have Obi-Wan, who is a more rounded, let's think this through, let's have a plan, let's think about how we're going to do things before we actually do it. And they kind of balance each other out in their friendship and their master apprentice relationship. But they're definitely opposite sides of the coin. That's definitely for sure. And in their decision making and their thought process. And I think there's a lot about Anakin that Obi-Wan does admire a little bit. Because I think there's part of Obi-Wan that wishes he could be as free-spirited as Anakin was, but he has to hold back because of his position in the Order.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Why do you think the original Star Wars had such a big impact on the people of its time?
I think because it was something new. It was something different. It was a drama in space using effects and ideas that had not been exercised before. George Lucas was really ahead of his time when he made Star Wars with his effects and with his visuals and camera shots. These are all things that had not been done in movies before, like they were done in Star Wars. So I think because of the creative genius of Lucas to be ahead of his time, it created a massive wave in cinema goers at that time.
Thank you.
Why do you think the Sith used the rule of two while there are so many Jedi?
Well, the rule of two, that was something that they kicked out there at some point, and there's a whole lore behind that. But a lot of it had to do with power and control. You have too many hands in the cookie jar, you're going to run out of cookies. Limit the hand in the cookie jar, more cookies for you. And I think that's essentially why they tried to limit it to two to have more power.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Do you think Anakin killing Count Dooku was justified?
Was it justified? I wouldn't think so. That's a good question. Could we justify the killing of Dooku? I would say no. It was not justified. He was defeated. He was on his knees. He was captured at that point. There was no need to execute him. The Order would have taken care of Dooku. And honestly, if he wouldn't have killed him and he'd have gotten back to the Order, there was a chance that they would have discovered everything about Palpatine prior to Order 66, which could have changed the history of the galaxy at that point. So, justified? No, I wouldn't say it was justified.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
What would have happened if Obi-Wan wasn't stuck behind the laser doors and he helped Qui-Gon Jinn defeat Darth Maul?
Oh, man. Again, you would have a completely change in the story. If Obi-Wan wouldn't have been trapped behind the ray shields and was in there fighting Maul with Qui-Gon, Qui-Gon most likely would have survived. The fight would not have lasted as long. And I honestly think that Qui-Gon training Anakin would have played out completely different than Obi-Wan training him, and could have changed his fall to the dark side. It's, you know, that's debate. A lot of people would debate that at that point, because then it would be his relationship with everybody around him would be different, because Qui-Gon was a bit more of that. He was a nice mesh of the two. He had no fear running in headfirst to the action, but he also was calm, cool, collected, and well thought out in his actions.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Why do the Jedi's bodies always disappear after they die?
Why? You know, that has to do with the Force at that point. When they die, the Force, I guess, you know, leaves the body. At which point, without the Force, according to the Force binds everything together. So if your Force leaves, there's nothing left. So with the Jedi and the Jedi being able to connect to the light side and the Force the way they do, they're able to vanish and become those Force ghosts you see at the end of Return of the Jedi.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
If Vader wasn't dead and he was still alive, do you think he would have made a good Jedi?
If Vader wouldn't have died in Return of the Jedi,
Yeah.
It would be an interesting story to see, because you know, you have the Emperor's right-hand man at that point turning good. There's going to be a lot of distrust between him and members of the rebellion. There's going to be a lot of distrust of him from the galaxy at whole. He would have a hard time, you know, going about doing Jedi business when he's not trusted. Everybody's going to remember the Dark Lord of the Sith that comes down hallways cutting people up. So, and it would be a difficult road to be traveled, but it could definitely be an interesting story. And I think it's something that of all the Jedi, he's the one that could have pulled it off.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Why is the film set a long time ago?
Because nobody would believe if it was yesterday. No, I'm just kidding. You know, I honestly don't have an answer to that. Congratulations. You know, I think it was just a story prop that Lucas decided to use to get people out of their element. Because when you think of stories and movies that were going out at that point, everything was based on, this is Earth, this is now, this is Earth in the future, this is Earth, this is, you know, the Middle Ages. These were a lot of the movies you were seeing back then, Errol Flynn and all those guys. And so I think at that point it was a matter of, let's get away from what the established time and history is in cinema, and let's take this a long time ago. Let's take this far, far away to basically suspend the belief of everybody seeing the movie.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Why do you think the Jedi would forbid attachment?
Why would the Jedi forbid attachment? The Jedi saw attachment as a form of weakness, per se. They saw it as something there. If you're attached, if you're in a situation and you have attachment to a single person, for a master having attachment to their Padawan or something like that, and you're in a combat situation, even though in a combat situation you're going to be fighting together and taking care of each other, you're going to be more concerned about saving the other person rather than completing the goal. So, and it's also a way when you're dealing with an order that goes around galaxy wide, not having those type of attachments, you're not guilty of showing favoritism to one or the other. So I think that's why they banned attachment in the order. You're welcome.
Yeah.
Do you think it was a mistake letting Anakin protect Padme for his mission?
Hindsight's always 20/20. So yeah, I would say it was. But it's one of those things that I think Obi-Wan knew more than what he was letting on. And I think if Obi-Wan really thought it was a bad idea, he would have spoken up. And he didn't really object too much to it. So I don't think in their sight they didn't see anything wrong. Heinz, looking at it from our perspective, yeah, probably not the best idea. He's got a connection to her from his childhood. There is that connection that the Jedi don't want to see in their Jedi, and they just kind of overlooked it to get the job done. So, probably not the best idea for them to have done.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
What do you think is the most underrated force power?
Ooh, underrated force power. Ooh, that's a good one. Probably the most underrated force power for me actually would be, I always like the force push. I like pushing people out of the way. So, a lot of people go with lightning, force lightning. Yeah, they like the lightning best. But to me, the most underrated would be the force push, because you see it the most often. You always see people doing it, and it's just kind of loses its shimmer, its shine, because you see it all the time. So I like the force push for that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
You're welcome.
In Revenge of the Sith, why do you think Palpatine saved Anakin and encased him in the black armor?
It's a hard work trying to find a student to follow you, and he has somebody who's committed to him. He's done his bidding. He is fully dedicated himself. He's killed Jedi. He killed the younglings. He killed the separatists. You have a guy who is totally committed. If you can save him and he's functional, you don't throw away a good tool. And he was a tool that Palpatine used, and since he could be salvaged, he salvaged him. So I think that's why he kept Vader around.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi. What's a theme that stays consistent throughout the movies?
Theme that stays consistent through the movies. I would have to say it's the theme of redemption, because there's throughout the story there is that the whole story of Star Wars is a story of redemption. You have the redemption of Anakin Skywalker. In the sequels, you have the redemption of Ben Solo, aka Kylo Ren. So there's always a story of redemption throughout the saga. That's always there, even in the movies, even in the stories outside of the 9 movies, the Skywalker saga, in Rogue One and Solo. There's in some of the shows, there's that story of redemption that's all throughout it. So I think the biggest story and theme in the saga is the story of redemption.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
In Return of the Jedi, what causes Darth Vader to break away from the control of the Emperor?
Love for his son. Simply the love for his son. He sees his son. He realizes now that that's his last connection to Padme. That is the son he's thought he had lost. So that the connection between a parent and their child is going to be stronger between it than any master-servant relationship. There's always going to be that stronger bond to a child, and I think that's what did Palpatine in.
So as we close, we just want to say thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to connect with us, you can find us on X, Instagram, and Facebook. Email us at readingbetweenreels@gmail.com or use the SpeakPipe app on our website. If you enjoyed the show, please like, follow, subscribe, and be sure to leave us a 5-star review on iTunes or Spotify. This helps the show out tremendously and absolutely helps us reach more people. And one last thing, next time we're back to our series on the films of Christopher Nolan with The Dark Knight. You know it, you love it. Got a favorite moment? Send us an email or voicemail and we'll feature it in the next episode.